Welcome to the podcast that's either like a punch in the face or a kick in the balls.
Oh, I'd rather a punch in the face.
Red Hot Underdogs rising tonight. Abs acting true, we bring in the fight. Talk about the game ain't just one side. Whistles blowing, sirens loud wide. Energy pumping, scheming plot. Nothing too small, nothing forgot. Boxing gloves and footy kicks. Sport and no sport mixing the fix.
Three, two, one. We are the Red Hot Underdogs coming to you for our first breaking news episode at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. I'm Anzac, and with me tonight is the ever incredible, long contained, often imitated, never duplicated Drewy.
Hey, buddy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast that's either like a punch in the face or a kick in the balls.
Oh, I'd rather a punch in the face.
I think I might too.
I've
Speaking of which,
had plenty of both, you know, yeah.
absolutely, and for good reason
For
in
good
my
reasons, always for good reasons.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of violence, we've had some very sad news today.
Yeah.
The passing of the great Mr. Big George Foreman,
Yeah.
two-time heavyweight boxing champion of the world.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
we spoke about
What a magnificent man he was.
yeah, we spoke about him.
Yeah.
What was it? Greatest achievements, greatest sporting achievements, was it? Or
Greatest sporting upsets of all time.
upsets?
Now,
Yeah.
in his prime, it wouldn't have been an upset, but
Yeah.
we actually spoke of when he became the heavyweight champion
Yep.
for the second time
Yep.
at the ripe old age, old being the operative word, particularly for boxing, heavyweight champion at 45 when he
Yeah.
knocked out Michael Moorer in the 10th round.
Yep. Yep.
But his is a very long and storied career,
Yeah,
Mr.
well,
George Foreman.
let's start from the beginning. Can you,
Yeah,
tell us a bit about George from the beginning to the end, and then a bit about his death and stuff like
yeah.
that. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a big running thing. We got plenty of time. So he was
Also,
actually
but
born.
before you go on, that episode that we did, upsets. What did he make? Was he fifth or something? Was he? Or do you remember his order?
I can't remember his number.
Yeah.
I think he came in about fifth or sixth,
High
maybe.
though,
I'd
pretty
have to
high.
go back and look at
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah, high. So, I mean,
pretty high.
amazing athlete. Yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
sorry, Drewy. So tell us about George Foreman.
So he was born in 1949 and unfortunately died in
Today.
2025.
Today.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, correct.
Yeah.
So age 76,
Not bad. Not bad.
not
Not bad.
bad.
But for a boxer,
He, that's
like,
right.
yeah, for a boxer.
So if ever there was a movie that could be made about a boxer that could be really well made,
Yeah.
George Foreman is your man. Now, I know they made one recently, but whoever made it absolutely butchered the hell out of it with a chainsaw.
Yeah,
I
wow.
often think some of these boxing movies should probably be made by hardcore fans or
Yeah.
intense boxing historians.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
Nonetheless,
shame. Like that, because he would have seen it too, like
yeah.
the movie and what was bad about this documentary or what was bad about it?
Oh, I just think that it glazed over the important bits. It didn't get to specifics that
Yeah.
hardcore fans might know about.
Yeah.
And I think above anything, the actors were like really low budget actors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably the movie itself was low budget. So it just wasn't a great representation of him. But despite that, if one day they could make a proper movie on a
Yeah.
big budget and get some historians made of to include themselves in the making of the movie, it'd
Yeah.
make for a brilliant, brilliant movie. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, so he died at the age of 76.
Yep.
throughout his life, he was married 5 times.
That's what killed him. Seriously. Wasn't the boxing ring, it was the bloody five marriages. Who would want to do that? Who would like after doing it once, why would you go back and put yourself through that bloody shit four more times? Seriously. Who would do that?
Now listen, if it wasn't the punches that killed him, you're right, it was the wives.
Jesus.
Just for the just for the record, I don't know the name of his fifth wife, the one
Yeah,
that
that's
he actually stayed with her in the end. Yeah, I
yeah,
think he married her in 85, so he
yeah.
finally found the right one.
Okay, so that one lasted.
That one actually lasted, and I can confirm that her name wasn't Chanel, so it wasn't Chanel number 5.
Yeah,
So
yeah, okay, all
I
right.
don't know what her name was,
Well,
but
my dad always said to me, you're better off marrying someone that's been married once or twice. So by then they just think all men are scumbags. That was his
yeah,
advice,
right.
seriously.
They've usually got a bit more wisdom through,
Yeah, I should have taken
crashing
it.
and
Yeah,
burning.
yeah,
That's
crushed
right.
it. But this Georgie, yeah, he knew you had to just keep on trucking.
And
Anyway, maybe you didn't. Anyway, sorry, Drew. Keep going, keep going, keep
and
going.
they didn't call Big George Foreman for no reason, because
Yep.
the big guy liked a good roll in the hay.
Yeah.
He actually had 12 kids.
Oh, Jesus. 12 kids, five wives, 12 kids.
He
Gee.
had 7 daughters
Oh,
and
God.
5 sons.
Yeah.
And get this for the kicker, all 5 sons' names were George.
No way.
George the first,
Seriously.
second, third, fourth, and George the
This
fifth.
just writes itself. Is this a comedy or not a, well, I mean, it ends
Well,
in
it may as well
an.
be, but he was a quirky guy.
Who
He did
has
actually.
five sons and calls them all George, like the same name? Seriously, who does that? Who does that?
Now, there was a method to his madness.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he said, myself and my sons, we all stick together. If one of us achieves something great, we all rise. If
Yeah.
one of us fails, we all fall. But
Okay.
we do everything together.
Well,
Yeah.
that's okay. What about the daughters? Are they allowed to achieve something, or they're,
Yeah, like he had, I don't know all their names. I didn't
yeah,
go through. It was a full
yeah.
phone book. I think
Well, it
one of them
wasn't
was Fred.
Georgia. Georgia 1, Georgia 2, Georgia 3, Georgia 4, Georgia 5, 6, 7.
Uh,
No.
there was a Natalie there. There was a
Are you?
Frida.
Are you?
But there was actually a Georgetta there. So
Oh,
I did
Georgetta.
notice that there
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
Georgetta.
Georgetta. Okay, yeah.
So,
I was kidding. Yeah, okay, he did.
oh, but there was. So when you get past all of that sort of
No,
bizzo, he actually won an
that wasn't
Olympic.
the trans kid, was it?
No, no, no. Oh, there was a licorice all sorts of
Yeah,
all
it's a
of his
licorice
kids,
also.
baby
Yeah, yeah,
mamas and kids flying everywhere.
yeah.
So good old George didn't mind the smoke as far as
No.
the chaotic life is
Yeah,
concerned.
yeah,
But in 1968, as a 19-year-old,
yeah,
he actually won the Olympic gold medal for
yeah,
the heavy division. So
yeah.
he is Olympic gold medalist, which is amazing.
Mm,
Now, he had a very storied career. A lot of people, I actually have him in my top three best heavyweights of all time. I
yep,
obviously have Ali at number one because of his enormous resume and the fact that he did beat the great George Foreman.
yeah,
If George Foreman had have beaten Ali and
yeah,
gone on to bigger and better things, there could have been a possibility that he could have one day been number one, but as history would have it, that didn't happen. Ali won, and George kind of spiraled into a bit of a depression after that.
yeah,
Uh, for reference, George Foreman was largely seen as a bruising, brooding, kind of intimidating man with a hell of a lot of power.
yeah.
And he actually went into the Ali fight as the favorite.
You, wow. Okay. I didn't know that. They fought
No,
a couple of times.
so
Tell us about those fights. They wasn't just one. It was like Rumble in
you
the.
know, he only fought Ali once.
Oh,
He
was
only
that
fought
Rumble in
Ali
the Jungle?
once.
They called it Rumble in the
Rumble in
Jungle.
the Jungle
What jungle was it? What
in
jungle?
1974.
What jungle?
Kinshasa, Zaire.
Okay, great. What jungle? Where was it held?
Well, because it was in Africa,
Okay, yeah,
it
that
was
jungle.
just named the Rumble in the
Yeah, there's
Jungle.
plenty of jungle in Africa, mate. Yep, yep. Okay.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and there was reasonable reason why George Foreman would be going into the Ali fight as the favorite because at the time, his record was actually 40 wins, no losses, and 37 knockouts.
Jeez, that's like that's Mayweather. Mayweather had 40 wins and no, or did he have
Which,
50? What did Mayweather
yeah,
have?
no, his finishing career record was 49 and
Yeah.
0.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
That's if you
wow.
don't count that poxy little McGregor Play-Doh fight at the end. No one counts the
Yeah.
50th one.
And did,
Uh,
did did Foreign have a Plato fight, or I guess it was that comeback fight he won. So that wasn't Plato.
well, yeah, no, I mean, but here's the thing.
Yep.
Foreman went into that fight. Now, he actually had two careers, George Foreman.
Yep.
The first one in the 70s, and then he came back in 87 after the Ali fight. But
Yep.
getting onto the Ali fight, what happened is
What year was that?
1974.
Okay, yep.
So
And
what
was that
happened?
it? I know because he won it twice, but would do people say that was the peak of his career, 74?
Interesting. Yeah, that was when he was in his prime for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah,
But I actually think that the peak of his career ironically came in 1994
yeah. When
when
he
he
won again.
unexpectedly sent
Yeah.
shockwaves through
Peak
the
of
entire world.
peak of his
Because,
career came later, but the peak of his,
yeah,
strength and performance was, 2 decades before then.
correct. So to give you some context going into the big Rumble in the Jungle fight,
Yep,
Ali actually had two losses before that fight. So he was 42 wins and two losses.
yep.
And George Foreman was 40 wins and no losses. Now, the two losses that Ali had were both on points to Joe Frazier and Ken Norton, but he had
Yep,
split those, so they were one apiece,
yeah,
those theories.
yeah,
Now, eventually Ali won those series 2-1 against Frazier and 2-1 against Norton. Me personally, I think Norton should have been the first person to have defeated Ali
yeah.
twice. And a lot of people think that Ali lost that 2-1, but he got a bit of a gift decision in the third fight. Be that as it may, heading into that fight, so he had split those fights with them 1-1, and he'd been beaten by Norton and Frazier previously. Now, George Foreman had also fought Norton and Frazier heading into that
And
fight
beat him.
and beaten both of them.
Yeah, yep,
And he knocked both of them out in the
yeah,
second round,
yeah. Jesus, wow. Okay.
round number two. He actually knocked Frazier down 6 times in a fight in Jamaica.
God, you don't
Uh,
get that much, do you? Like, yeah,
so, you know, obviously everyone's going, gee, what hope has Muhammad Ali got?
yeah,
So, and if ever you want to watch anything on that, there's a fantastic documentary called When We Were Kings.
yep.
It's a documentary made, I think, roughly about 1995, I think. And awesome. Shows all of the highlights back then, interviews, retrospective, introspective,
Yeah.
views and opinions of people in and around that time and people who lived it and
Yeah.
footage. So
Okay, cool. When we
that's
were
one for
kings.
if people want to watch When We Were Kings.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, so anyway, just getting onto that fight. Uh, Foreman had enormous power,
Mm.
just absolutely blew people away with big punches.
Yeah.
People thought Tyson was fearsome, but I always believe, and a lot of people believe that Foreman was a notch or two above Tyson.
Yeah.
So anyway, in that fight, Ali came back to his corner after the first and second round,
Yeah.
and he said to his trainer, "The guy's bigger than me,
Yeah.
stronger than me,
More
he's more
handsome than me.
powerful.
Yeah.
Oh, this is brutal." So instead, he goes, "Well, you know what? He's younger, bigger, stronger, even might be faster at this stage, even as fast as Ali was. He was starting to get on a little bit in years, in the
Yeah.
wear and tear.
Yeah.
So Ali thought, I'm going to use my brain."
Yeah.
And in a way, he kind of psychologically bullied the bully. He'd throw some punches out there every now and then, wait for Big George to wail away at him. Ali was getting absolutely pummeled, but he'd get behind his guard and he'd say, "Come on, George. Come on, George. Is that all you got? Is
Ah.
that all you got? You can't hit for shit." And this annoyed George, and George gave in to his ego.
Yeah.
And instead of boxing smart, he wanted to knock the absolute living hell out of Ali until
Understandably.
such time as the
Understandably.
eighth round,
Yeah.
where he had caused such psychological damage on Foreman,
Yeah.
goading him to knock him out, that Foreman had become absolutely exhausted
Yeah.
and thus causing Foreman to have his only knockout loss in his entire career of 81 fights.
Wow. Okay.
So,
81 fights. Who
yeah.
has 81 fights in their whole life?
Rumble in the jungle. And so his record was 81 fights, 76 wins,
Jesus.
68 knockouts, and
Crazy.
only five losses,
Yeah.
and a rough KO percentage of around about 84%.
Huge.
So
Huge.
massive win for Ali,
Yep.
enormous. And I think I don't have the exact numbers on me, probably something I should have researched, but it was the most watched sporting event at that time
Yeah. Yep.
in the whole of history. And you know what? I don't quote me, and I might be wrong, but it still might hold the record for the
Yeah.
most watched sport boxing event of all time,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
quite possibly.
Yeah.
So
Because boxing in the 70s was
yeah,
bigger than it is now. Because,
yeah,
like, just because now we've got more sports and we've got not just more sports, we've got YouTube. I'm saying
yeah,
YouTube. We've got YouTube. We've got more media. We've got, a couple of bums can make a YouTube video,
yeah.
and get 100 people watching it every week. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Exhibit A and Exhibit B. But
exactly. Like, you don't have
so
to be that good or big to get attention, Like,
look at us, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, Dumb and
no, it's
Dumber.
Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. I don't know
Yeah,
who you
yeah.
are, but my point is that 70s, like,
Mm.
was bigger. Like,
Golden age, golden
were
age for boxing.
bigger. TV was bigger, for ages after then too. Like, TV series and shows will
Mm.
never get those numbers again. Musicians will never sell those records again. Like,
But
it
that was boxing's golden age.
golden
So
age. Yep.
what happened there is Foreman then continued on for another 3 years. He had a little bit of trouble trying to get a rematch with Ali straight away after that.
And
Because
didn't.
Ali
He
knew
didn't get
that
one, so never got
he
one.
was in a, and he never got one again, but
But wanted
he
one, obviously.
he
Yeah.
knew he knew Ali knew he was in a hell of a fight. Don't worry about
Yeah.
that. And he knew that he just so happened to think of a smart game plan that might not work the second time round. Who knows? It still could have.
Mm.
He still could have. He's that smart and that intellectual that he could have come up with a new one and maybe beat George for a second time. He might not have. We'll never know.
Yeah.
But George continued for a few more years
Yeah.
after that, up until 77. Now, There was starting to become murmurs of a rematch happening, but then in 1977, George Foreman lost on points for the second time to a fighter called Jimmy Young.
Mm.
And Jimmy Young was a reasonable fighter, but he wasn't like completely elite. At
Yeah.
that point, it sort of felt like George's heart had gone from the game a little bit.
Yeah.
And this fight was in Puerto Rico.
Oh,
George
yeah.
went to his dressing room,
Mm.
collapsed through heat exhaustion because it
Yeah.
was an open air fight.
Yeah.
Then he claims that he saw some sort of spiritual awakening
Oh,
and
yeah. God.
saw Jesus or something.
Okay. One of
And
those
then,
ones. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, then declared his retirement. And
Oh,
nobody
okay.
really believed it.
After he saw a spirit god. Okay, yep. All right. And
Correct.
he wasn't like seeing stars or anything, like anyway.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
A puddle from the shower was in the
Yeah,
shape of
yeah. Yeah.
head. Yeah,
A face in the mirror. Oh my God.
correct. It wasn't George, it was the other
Who is
guy.
that old man looking back at me in the mirror? It must be
Yeah.
Jesus or God or Muhammad or who knows, but anyway, yep. Okay, yep.
So anyway, after 77, he actually became a minister
Ah, yep.
of the church.
Of course
And
he.
he set up
Yep.
his own youth center,
Good. I
which
mean, that's cool. That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he gave educational scholarship opportunities to kids, sporting opportunities to kids, job opportunities to kids, troubled kids,
Yep.
impoverished kids,
Yep.
and obviously did his ministerial work.
Yep.
So he found a really rich vein of form as far as his life and spiritual
Yeah.
awakening and
Yeah.
inner self was concerned within that period of time. And
Good on him. Yeah.
he actually said that that was probably his most happy time of his life.
Yep.
And actually didn't have designs on coming back into the world of boxing. He
Yeah.
had no great motivation for it. The reason why he came back in 1987, 10 years later, was that he needed money to
Yeah.
keep funding the youth centre.
Wow. What a
Otherwise,
reason. What a reason
it
to
was
come
going to
back.
go belly up.
Yeah. What a reason to come back. What a reason to fight for. No pun intended, but to fight for. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, he came back and everybody thought, oh, come on, George, stop
Yeah.
this nonsense.
It
You're
reminds
40
me of
years old now.
It reminds me of the Blues Brothers, the movie where they think they're on a mission from God and they're like, we're on a mission from God. And Georgie was on a mission from God to save that youth center and to knock that guy out 10 years after not putting
He
on the
was.
gloves. Yeah.
He absolutely was. Now, people thought that George was crazy. Now,
Yeah.
George actually contacted promoter Bob Arum for his
Mm.
comeback.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Arum was quite surprised because in George's initial career, his first career,
Mm.
George was a gruff, mean, angry, brooding kind of fighter
Yeah.
and personality.
Yeah.
And he rang up Aram as some cheerful, jovial guy, and
Yeah.
Bob Aram was like, "Who is this?
Who
And
is
what
this?
have you done with George
Yeah, yeah,
Foreman?"
where's George? Wait, he's locked up in my boot, We locked him up. Well, they call it the trunk in
Absolutely.
America. He's locked up in my trunk.
So he came back as the jovial fat man with the bald head. By
Yeah,
that time, his afro had receded and
yeah,
his
yeah,
hair had
yeah,
gone.
yeah. No, not a hair on his head. Yeah, yeah.
That's correct. So he brought out the full plate of hamburgers and
Yeah,
I'm jolly old George,
yeah,
and people
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
this guy.
yeah.
But actually, he said something intelligent. He goes, if I could have brought the wisdom of what I have now to my earlier career, I honestly believe that I could have been maybe the best heavyweight of all time. Now,
Well
it's a
said.
big call.
Yeah,
You could argue it. And if he
yeah,
had have had those smarts in the
yeah,
Ali fight, not saying it's a guarantee, but there's a surefire shot that maybe he could have won. And it's true that the youth is wasted on all of us. And
yeah,
in whatever we do. Quite often we think if only we
Everybody.
had the smarts of what we have now when
Yeah,
we were
everybody
younger
thinks
and
like
what
that.
we could have done.
Everybody in the world
Absolutely.
that gets to age 47, whatever,
Mm.
thinks like that.
Yeah.
Why didn't I have
So
this brain when I had that body 20 years ago?
correct. So when he came back,
Yeah,
instead of being this big mean slugger with mad power, he
yeah,
had the power,
hmm,
but now he had to adapt because he didn't have the physiology that he
yeah,
had when he was younger
yeah,
and the youthful exuberance and stamina. So
yeah,
then he had now had boxing IQ and he worked on his boxing nuances and skill set. So he
yeah.
now had power,
Combos.
and although he had a deteriorated body, he had a better set of skills.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he rattled off a number of wins in his comeback. So his actual second career from 1987 to when it finished in 1997 was 36 wins and three losses, which is
That's
astonishing when you think that that's
like,
a 40-year-old man coming
and
back.
that's like, I thought he just had a couple of fights as an old man, but
No.
he had heaps of
So
them.
yeah, so he pretty much finished at I think what was that 50
Yeah,
years of age.
yeah,
So he gained great notoriety when he came back and fought a prime Evander Holyfield.
yeah,
Now, he didn't win that, but everybody thought, oh, Holyfield's gonna eat this guy for breakfast. But George happened to hurt Holyfield one or two times during the fight.
yeah,
And although he clearly lost, it was no slaughter, and he
yeah,
gave Holyfield a hell of a run for his money.
yeah,
The winner was clear, but the competition that this fat old man gave a prime Evander Holyfield
yeah,
made everyone stand up and take notice.
yeah, yeah. And
George,
entertainment, great entertainment.
yeah. Now, I'll get to the one where he actually became world champion. So I think it was about a year or 16 months prior to George Foreman beating Michael Moorer. He lost to uh, Morrison, who I forget, Tommy Morrison, who was another heavyweight. And it was one of his more forgettable performances. I think he sort of lost a bit of motivation at that time because he wanted a shot. And he not only did he come back to save the youth centre, but he wanted a final shot. And it
Yeah,
just didn't seem to be happening for him.
yeah.
Anyway, Uh, in the meantime, Michael Moorer defeated a prime George. Michael Moorer defeated a prime Evander Holyfield.
Ah, okay.
Point, a prime version of Evander Holyfield. So after that, George jumped on the phone to Bob Arum
Yeah,
the next day, and Bob Arum said, George, I hope this phone call isn't what I think it is.
yeah,
And George goes, I think you know what it is. Bob Arum goes, don't tell me. You want a shot at Michael Moorer, who beat a prime Evander Holyfield. And George Foreman answered with the words, more than anything.
yeah. Wow. Okay. What a legend, hey? What a legend.
Oh, huge. Now, there's a 19-year age difference between Michael Moorer and George Foreman at the time. So George Foreman was
Crazy,
45,
crazy,
Michael Moorer was 26.
crazy.
So to put things into perspective, Big George Foreman won the Olympic gold medal on the year that Michael Moorer was born.
10 minute warning,
So
cuz. A 10 minute
10
warning.
minutes.
We're running out of
Beautiful.
time. Yeah.
So, so to
Yeah,
wrap
wow.
it
So
up,
so so he won a gold medal when this guy
mm,
was, a twinkle in some mum's eye.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
A spurt out of the old man's gold member.
Yeah, wow.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so this fight came around. It was seen as basically a last shot at glory.
Yeah.
It was going to make some good money for George
Yeah.
Foreman.
Yeah.
Anyway, Michael Moorer was absolutely boxing George Foreman's ears off for 9 rounds.
Yeah.
George wasn't winning a single round. But before the fight, George said to commentator and boxing journalist Jim Lampley, when Jim Lampley asked, "How the hell are you going to defeat Michael Moorer, who just defeated a prime Evander Holyfield?" George Foreman said, "Jim, at some point during the fight, I don't care what anyone says. I could be behind by an absolute landslide, but at some point, Michael Moorer will be standing in front of me, and I will knock him out."
I
And
like
he
that.
did in the
And
10th
he did
round.
it.
He predicted his own victory,
Yeah, good on
which
him.
sent absolute shockwaves through the world.
Yep.
So Michael Moore was probably fighting the fight of his life. He was absolutely boxing Foreman's ears off. And
Yep.
then George Foreman said he just needed to get Michael Moore a bit confident so that he'd fight like a fighter and not retreat and be in front of him for just a split second. So Foreman goes, if I could just manage to get him in the right position, because I wasn't going to win on points. He threw a left hook to the body, and then all of a sudden he felt that Mora felt that and moved his body to a certain position. Then Foreman threw a jab, and then behind that jab was hidden a great big missile nuclear right hand that sent Mr. Mora crashing to the canvas
Mm.
and getting completely knocked out, counted out by 10,
Yeah.
and the commentator, Jim Lampley, ended up yelling out in front of the telecast to millions of people, "It happened.
Mm.
It happened.
It certainly did.
It happened." Yes,
Hey,
amazing.
was there a rematch of that or just the one?
No, Mora didn't take too kindly emotionally to that win.
Yeah.
It took him a while to recover,
Yep.
particularly losing to a 45-year-old man when you're
Yep.
26
Yep.
and losing a heavyweight title fight. Some fighters recover emotionally better than others.
Yep.
Mora, I do believe, came back to win a certain version of a heavyweight belt later on, but never the same after that.
Yep.
But for George Foreman, it opened up all sorts of opportunities, including the George Foreman Grill. And
Yep.
it's just a great redemption story to say no matter how old you are, no matter how much the odds are against you, no matter how many people don't believe in you, you don't need to believe in them. You just need to believe in yourself.
I
And
like
George
it.
absolutely adhered to
But
that narrative.
we got 6 minutes just clocking now.
Yep.
I know we talked about the grill in that
Yeah.
previous episode,
Mm.
greatest moments of all time, or can we talk
Revisit
about
it?
it again? Yeah, if anybody
Yeah,
didn't watch that episode.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the grill
Mm.
made George Foreman absolute millions. Beating Michael Moorer was the cherry on top to put a
Yeah.
45-year-old
But
heavyweight champion
which
as the
which
grill
happened first? Which happened first?
beating Michael Moorer.
Yeah.
It opened up all the doors. And
Yep.
Michael Moorer later joked, if I had have won, maybe I might have had a grill.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
but but jolly old George. So what happened essentially is there was a manager for putting out these products, these endorsement products for people, and Hulk Hogan was in line to get the grill,
Yeah.
as was George Foreman.
Yeah.
Now, the WWE or Rock and Roll Wrestling or
Yeah.
WWF, as it was called back
Yeah.
then, Hogan was on top of the world, plus all over
It was
everyone.
huge. It was like,
This
as we said,
guy,
boxing was bigger, but WW, like the World Wrestling Federation, was phenomenally big.
yes. So he was
Superstars. They were
actually
superstars, superstars, superstars. Hulk
absolute
Hogan
rock stars,
was a
superstar,
rock star. He was a rock
the
star.
whole bit.
Yeah.
So Hulk Hogan was first in line for that. Now, this manager
First in line.
called Hulk Hogan's house. This was
Yeah.
before mobile phones were
Of
more
course.
readily
Yeah,
available.
way before. Yep.
Not every man and his dog had a mobile.
No one did. No one
Then,
did.
if they did, if back then if they did, it would have been the Hulk Hogan grill,
And
but it was.
you
So they
had
called.
car phones. Some people had those big car phones, but
Mm,
anyway, sorry, Drew. Keep going. You got
that's
3 minutes and
3 minutes
50.
56. I'll
Yeah,
make it quick. So they called Hulk Hogan's house. Now, Hulk Hogan was out doing the good fatherly thing and
yeah.
watching his kids play school sport at the
Good
weekend.
sport.
But
Yep.
his wife was at home.
He's the old wife.
They
Yep.
said, listen, we're just calling because we want to offer Hulk this massive grill
Yep.
or a blender.
A
You
blender.
can choose between the two. You can
Yep.
either go the Hulk grill or the Hulk blender. And the wife goes, Hulk's not home. They go, oh, really? And she goes, well, I can't make a business decision for him. Then they go, well, we're not legally going to make you make a business decision for you, even if he wasn't at home
Yeah.
and you wanted to make the decision. We're not legally obliged to do that. He has to be there. We
Yeah.
have to talk to in
Yeah.
order to make
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they called George Foreman. They
Yeah.
said, look, we tried to call Hulk. He wasn't at home. We
Next
got
on the
an
list.
offer.
Next on
Do
the
you want
list.
a grill or a blender? Sorry, George Foreman goes, give me the grill.
He
I
said
love the
grill. He
sound of the
said
grill.
grill,
I
baby,
don't really
grill.
like the sound of the blender. Everyone's got a blender. I
Yeah.
love my hamburgers. I
Yeah.
love my juicy heart attack style meat.
Yep.
Give me that freaking grill
Nobody
right now.
wants a blender. Nobody wants a blender. Nobody does.
That's right.
Yeah.
So later on, they actually called up Hulk Hogan. They said, do you want the grill or do you want the blender? And he goes, I want the grill. And the manager guy goes, well, unfortunately, you weren't home. And we gave that to George because that's what he
Well, why
picked.
would
So
they ask him a
George
second
didn't get
time
the
if there
blender.
was no choice? Are you sure they did that?
Yeah, they wanted to fuck around with his mind and just see the hypothetical. It's a curiosity thing. I would have wanted to do the same thing too, quite frankly.
Okay, all right. I see that.
As it turns out, bloody Foreman was doing these ones,
Yeah,
doing the hand off the fist sort of
yeah,
motion, making absolute millions upon millions out of
yeah.
this grill. It was a money-making machine.
Wonder, did anybody buy the Hulk Hogan blender? I wouldn't mind one.
Not many, I don't believe, but I know after this episode, I'm going to look it up on Google
Yeah,
to see how well it did in production. Unfortunately, it flopped quite spectacularly.
yeah,
On the other side of the equation, the grill most certainly did not.
yeah.
It reached
Um,
Everest proportions in every sense of the word. So did Mr. George Foreman with his redemption story, with his narrative,
well,
and
not only
death
did it,
serves a great lesson for everyone.
Drewy, not only did it, the George Foreman grill do well, like
Yeah,
people call this cooking utensil a George
yeah,
Foreman, you know?
correct.
Even if it's not a George Foreman, they call it a George
Instead of
Foreman.
a toaster, they're calling it a George
Do you
Foreman.
know,
That's right.
it's like
Yeah.
in England, they don't call a vacuum cleaner a vacuum, they call it a Hoover.
No, Hoover.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, they say
Correct.
Hoover it. Yeah. So they don't say, oh, I'm going to go buy a grill, like a plug-in grill. They say, I'm
Gotcha.
going to
It's a
buy a
George
grill.
Foreman.
You
I
know what? You've got
gotcha.
less than a minute to go.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
RIP George. What else can we say?
R.I.P. George. Great message. Anybody, you're never out of the fight. And
Yeah.
if someone says you can't do something, tell them you don't believe them.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's
Right.
what George did.
That's
Rip on Georgie.
that's what
You
George
are the
did.